It's 10:42 p.m., and you're tuned in to 104.6 FM. My name's Cole Bennett, and I'm coming to you from the second-floor studio of what's left of WQBR in downtown Rockford, Illinois. The air outside is heavy, not in a way you feel on your skin, but in your lungs, like the oxygen's been swapped out for something thicker, something stale. It's 63 degrees, windless, and the streets below me are darker than they've ever been. The city went from that low buzz of street lamps and passing cars to a kind of dead quiet that feels wrong. Even the usual background noises, the hum of the transformers, the distant trains, they're gone. The only sound I've had for the last hour is the occasional snap of a branch under someone's boot, and even that's been rare. I'm running this place off the old diesel generator in the maintenance room, the one the station manager swore would never start again. I've got about 48 hours of fuel left if I keep the lights dim and the broadcast gear on low power. After that, I guess it's just me in the dark. Subscribe for more sleep stories. I don't know how to start this in a way that makes sense. If you've been listening for the past week, you already know something's wrong. Hell, you felt it yourself. But I need to lay it out as straight as I can for anyone who's just tuned in. This isn't one of those big media panic cycles. This isn't another virus scare where the numbers are so small you start thinking it's more politics than plague. This is different. This is quiet, and it's spreading in ways that make no sense to me, or to anyone I've been able to get on the line. It started 9 days ago, just before midnight, when the city power grid cut out for exactly 6 minutes. Every block went dark, the whole skyline blinked out like someone hit a switch, and then, just as suddenly, it came back on. At first, nobody thought much of it. Power cuts happen. But that same night, the first calls came in to the local police. People saying there was a man on their porch, just standing there, staring into their windows. Some said the figure left the second they were spotted. Others said he didn't move at all, just stayed there like a statue until the caller closed the blinds. The cops called it a weird streak of trespassing and told people to keep their doors locked. No arrests were made. By the third night, the pattern shifted. It wasn't just porches. People were being found in alleys and parking garages, pale and shaking, with what the papers at first called animal-like injuries. Deep puncture wounds to the neck and forearms, missing blood. I mean that literally. Hospital staff said the patient's blood volume was dangerously low, but there was barely any sign of blood loss at the scene. I've spoken to one nurse, off the record, who told me the labs came back with something she couldn't explain. The remaining blood cells were damaged in ways she'd never seen before. The membranes warped, like they'd been altered at a structural level. She said it didn't look like disease so much as design. 2 nights ago, I saw it myself. I was leaving here just after 2 a.m., heading down State Street toward my apartment, when I spotted a man standing under the streetlight at the corner. At first, I thought maybe he was drunk. He was swaying slightly, head tilted down. But then he lifted his face toward me, and I swear to God his eyes reflected that streetlight like a cat's. I froze. He didn't speak, didn't step forward, just turned and walked into the alley. I don't know why I followed, maybe because I didn't want to believe what I saw, but by the time I turned the corner, the alley was empty. No doors open, no windows nearby. He was just gone. Yesterday, the hospital stopped taking new patients, not because they're full, because they're empty. Entire wards have been cleared. I don't know where those patients went. No ambulances, no transfers to other facilities. They're just gone, and nobody official will say a word. City Hall's been closed for deep cleaning since Monday, and the mayor's voice in those pre-recorded updates sounds wrong, like someone reading a script they've never seen before. I've got a friend, Carl, who works IT for the local PD, and he told me their internal comms are locked down tighter than he's ever seen. They're not sharing incident reports even between departments. Whatever's going on, it's not just medical, it's controlled. I've been piecing together what I can from shortwave chatter and a couple of ham operators outside the city. They're hearing similar stories from Milwaukee, Madison, even as far as Des Moines. Isolated power cuts, strange behavior in the streets at night, hospitals going dark. The thing is, it's not consistent. Some towns are fine. Others are half empty within days. And always, the last thing anyone reports is seeing more of those figures. The still ones. The ones who seem to be watching. There's a theory floating among the few people I trust to tell me the truth. It's not an infection in the way we think of one. Not flu, not rabies. Something that gets inside you and changes you in ways you don't feel until you're already too far gone. I know how that sounds. I can hear myself saying it. But I can't come up with another explanation for how fast people vanish, or why the ones who come back aren't the same. And they aren't the same. They move differently, talk differently, and they avoid the daylight. That's not rumor. That's observation. Every confirmed sighting in the past week has been after sunset. I'm going to stay on this frequency as long as the generator holds. I'll keep telling you what I see and what I hear from people I trust. For now, I'd tell you to do 3 things. Stay inside after dark, don't open the door to anyone you don't know personally, and if you see someone standing still under a streetlight, turn around. Go home. Lock the door. Tomorrow, I'll try to get Carl back on the line, see if he can get me something out of the PD servers. Until then, this is Cole Bennett, WQBR 104.6 FM, and I'm not going anywhere. It's 11:53 p.m. now, and I've been sitting here with my headphones half off, trying to make sense of what just happened. About 30 minutes ago, the city went dark again. This time not for 6 minutes, not for an hour, but for good. The transformer hum outside the studio cut out like someone pulled the plug on the whole county. The only light left is coming from my desk lamp and the faint red glow from the transmitter board. I can see the skyline from here, or I used to. Now it's just a jagged silhouette against a cloudy sky. No windows lit, no cars moving. It's like the city itself has stopped breathing. When the grid dropped, I heard something else. Faint at first, then clearer. A low, steady hum. Not electrical, not mechanical. Almost vocal. It came from somewhere beyond the station walls, and for a second I thought maybe it was feedback from the generator. But it wasn't. It was outside, maybe a block away, carrying through the still air. I stepped to the window and saw shapes moving down Main Street, not in a hurry, not stumbling, just gliding. No flashlights, no phones, no noise, but that humming. I counted at least 12 before they disappeared into the intersection, heading toward the river. And here's the part that stuck with me. Every single one of them turned their head toward the station at the same moment. Like they knew I was watching. Like they could feel it. The phone lines have been dead for hours, but the shortwave is still alive in bursts. A guy 2 towns over said their mayor declared a local curfew, but didn't explain why. Then the local sheriff's office went silent. No radio traffic at all. Another voice, faint and cracking through static, said the National Guard was seen setting up barriers along Highway 20. But here's the thing. No official broadcast. Nothing on TV. The few AM stations still on air are just looping old public safety messages about temporary disruptions and keeping calm. None of it matches what's actually happening on the ground. I dug out an old spiral notebook from my desk and started listing what I know for certain. It's not much, but it's more than we're getting from anyone in authority. 1. Whatever's happening started with those brief, precise power cuts. 2. After the cuts, people start disappearing or showing up with strange injuries. 3. The injured don't stay in hospitals for long, and when they come back out, they avoid daylight. 4. The blackout tonight wasn't followed by the usual chaos. No looting, no sirens, just movement in the streets by people who shouldn't be there. 5. They know how to find each other, and maybe how to find us. An old contact of mine, a retired Army medic named James Holloway, reached me on shortwave about an hour before the blackout. He sounded tired, scared in a way I'd never heard before. He said he'd been called in to assist with a classified situation at a facility outside Joliet. No details, just an order to get there fast. When he arrived, he said there were 20 people in a sealed ward, all with pale skin and deep wounds that weren't clotting right. They weren't sedated, but they were lying still, eyes closed, almost like they were sleeping. The strange part, according to him, was the heart rate monitors. Slow. Too slow. 30 beats a minute or less, and yet they were breathing normally. He said it felt like standing in a room full of people who were already dead, but just hadn't been told yet. I asked him if it was some kind of pathogen, maybe a blood-borne one. He hesitated, then said something I'll never forget. Cole, it's not just in the blood. It's using the blood to change everything else. Muscle, nerves, even the way their brain responds to light and sound. And when they open their eyes, it's like looking into an animal that's only pretending to be human. Before I could press him for more, there was a burst of noise on his end, metal scraping, someone shouting, and the line went dead. I keep thinking about that hum I heard. It wasn't random. It was in time, like a chant or a signal. And if they can signal each other, then maybe they can coordinate in ways we don't understand yet, which would mean we're not dealing with mindless predators. We're dealing with something organized, patient, and deliberate. If you're hearing this, I need you to write this frequency down, 104.6 FM, because it may not last. If you lose me here, scan for shortwave 6.830 megahertz. That's where I'll be if the generator dies. I'll keep this up until my last gallon of fuel's gone. Don't trust any broadcast that tells you to gather in one place unless you can verify who's sending it. Don't go near anyone who avoids daylight. And if you hear humming in the street after dark, do not go to the window. This is Cole Bennett. I'll be here as long as the lights stay on. It's after midnight, and the temperature has slipped to the high 50s, the kind of chill that finds the bones when there's no wind to push it along. The rain that threatened earlier never came. The air tastes like old pennies, and when I cracked the stairwell door to listen, I could hear the empty city breathing in slow, far-off creaks of metal cooling, and an occasional thump I couldn't place. The generator downstairs is steady for now, a low, steady knock like a heartbeat I keep counting without meaning to. If that heartbeat stops, this voice stops with it. You're on 104.6 FM, and I'm still Cole Bennett in the second-floor room with the paper cup of cold coffee, the desk lamp, the hand-cranked flashlight waiting beside it, and the promise I made to stay on the air as long as I can hold it together. I keep thinking about the first time I sat in this chair, years before tonight, when the loudest thing in this room was the fan rattling in the ceiling and a producer telling me to smile when I talked, so it would carry through the mic. I'm not smiling now. I'm counting diesel and listening for the hum under the hum. When the grid failed for good, something else took its place. Not light, not power, but a pattern. You can hear it if you give yourself enough quiet and step away from your own fear for a second. It runs along the river first, down where the water pulls south past the old bridges, and then it spreads through the blocks like a hand moving across a map. I leaned my forehead to the glass and trained my eyes on the corner where state meets first, and I saw the reflection before I saw them, the faint catch of eyes in the window across from me, not from my lamp, but from the red glow of the tower indicator. There is something about that glow that draws them, and I've covered it with a sheet now, tucked it tight. But I know the line of sight exists in their heads, whether the light shows or not. They move like they're not moving. It's a trick of the way they stop and start, how you only notice the new position and not the step between. I wrote that in the notebook, large letters across a full page so I won't forget it when the details blur. They change position without showing the step between. I had a second notebook going for names, because names matter when everything else starts washing out. I set it up by day and street, quick notes to track who left the hospital and who never went home. The first page is just scratch, then it sharpens. Thursday, Jefferson and Whitman, a man in a brown hoodie sitting on the curb, elbows on knees, sunrise at his back. Friday, Court and Mulberry, the back door of the urgent care propped with a yellow bin, 5 empty gurneys rolled to the alley, no one pushing. Saturday, the West Wing at Swedish American pulled dark at noon with blinds drawn from inside and cart tracks on the tile like a rush job. Sunday is just a line I wrote so hard the pen tore the paper. The trauma ward is empty, and nobody is saying the word empty. I underlined that until the page wrinkled. On Monday, I wrote 2 names I knew well, and I stopped writing for an hour because it hurt in a way that made my hands shake. We spent years talking about big stories like they were puzzles you could solve with time and patience. This isn't that. This is a tide in the body. I reached James again just once, a shortwave hiss that cleared for maybe 20 seconds, his voice ragged and too close to the mic on his end. He didn't tell me where he was. He just said he wasn't at the Joliet site anymore, that the sealed ward had been moved by people who didn't wear badges and didn't speak unless they had to. He said the readings were off the chart on things he never had to measure before, and that the new baseline for normal didn't look human. He told me to watch for the way they look down before they lift their eyes, like they're checking a list you can't see. He said it's soft, like he was afraid the radio was listening. And then there was a clatter, and the signal dropped, and a different tone bled through, like a single note from a tuning fork struck somewhere underground. I waited in case he came back. He didn't. I sat with the handset to my ear until my arm went numb, and the battery warning beeped, and I put it down, because a dying tone in the dark will push you to places you shouldn't go. There are 2 kinds of silence in this city now. The regular kind that comes after midnight on a weekday. The ordinary quiet when the bars have emptied, and the cops are making last rounds, and the trains are a soft thunder with their lights sliding over the river. Then there's this other silence, the one we're in tonight. And it has weight to it, like a blanket laid over noise and breath. You don't notice it all at once. It creeps in through the things you expect to hear and don't. No distant siren Doppler, no brake squeal, no scatter of bottles at the bin behind the diner, no apartment radios bleeding through walls by accident. Just the occasional building shift, and the clicks from the board, and that low sound in the street that isn't a voice, but might as well be, because it makes you want to answer without words. I wrote answer without words on the margin and drew a box around it. I wasn't trying to be poetic. I was trying to mark the trap. I don't have power to waste, but I walked the hallway with the flashlight anyway, because sometimes you have to move to keep your head. I kept the beam low on the baseboards and counted doors to remind myself what floor I was on. There's the supply closet with the mop and the mountain of old carts. There's the office where we used to cut PSAs about blood drives and flood watches. There's the little break room with the microwave clock stuck at 12. Which is funny in a stupid small way because the grid is gone and that clock's been blinking for a year. I pressed my ear to the stairwell door and heard nothing, then nothing again, and then a sound so soft I would have missed it if I'd breathed. It was the brush of something against the painted cinder block, a drag like fabric or skin. I stepped back and killed the light and waited, and that waiting felt like half an hour but was probably 10 seconds. When I turned the beam back on, there was a smear on the wall at knee height, a long downward curve of something that looked dark but dry. I took my handkerchief and touched it and brought the cloth up to the light. It wasn't blood red, more the color of old rust, and it smelled faintly metallic and faintly sour, like the trash can outside a clinic in July. I folded the cloth over and put it in a Ziploc I'd been using for nuts. I don't know why. Maybe because I want proof for later that this was real. I said earlier not to trust any broadcast that tells you to gather in one place unless you can verify it, and I need to explain why I'm pressing that so hard. I scanned the band after the blackout and picked up a crisp, confident voice on 98.3 giving an evacuation point at the park by the river, with a timetable and a promise of buses staged on Madison. It sounded official, not in the way of a recorded message, but like a live incident commander who's done it 100 times. The part that snagged me wasn't even the content, it was the cadence. Every 10th word had a tiny hitch, a half-beat delay, like the speaker was following along with a metronome only he could hear. He repeated the instructions twice, then there was a pause long enough for someone to pack a bag, and then he came back and said, "If you were elderly or had kids, go first." That's when I cut the dial and swore into my sleeve because the words were right and the rhythm was wrong, and it felt like a net with the mesh just big enough for the ones who could run to slip through while it caught the ones who couldn't. I went to the window. No buses. No lights. No movement at Madison. Only that slow line of shapes tracing the edge of the park and turning their faces toward the water. I wrote down a few basics that keep repeating from the small scraps of truth I can find. Daylight matters more than we want it to. Whatever this is, it hates direct sun, not in a myth way, but in a way that looks like pain when it hits. Even early morning light makes them pull back into shade like the air itself burns. There's something about flowing water that throws them, and maybe it's not some old story about crossing a stream so much as the way the surface moves and confuses what they're using to orient. Every time I watch them near the downtown bridges, they slow. They tilt their heads like they're listening for a step that won't hold still. They don't breathe like we do once they're far along. If you stand in the cold and watch your breath cloud and see nothing from them, don't talk yourself into thinking it's because you missed it. Their skin runs cool. Thermals paint them as holes rather than heat. I put that on the list too. Holes on the thermal. There's a sentence I never thought I would have to say into a microphone. But here we are, and you deserve sentences that help. Food is already a problem in the blocks near here. You can tell by the way the dumpsters sit full and the back doors stay closed. The longer the power's out, the faster the good stuff goes bad. People will wait for a promise from a voice before they go to the pantry under their bed. And some promises out there aren't being made for us. If you're listening, and the sun hasn't come up yet where you are, this is what you can do without leaving the room. Water first. If you've got bottled, great. If you don't, fill the tubs and every container you have as soon as you see first light. That buys you days. Food next. Canned before boxed. Keep a manual can opener within reach, because an electric one is just a sculpture now. If you have a gas stove with a manual ignition, you can still boil. If you don't, a small camp stove near an open window will do the job in short bursts if you ventilate and keep a fire extinguisher ready. Black out the windows, not for privacy, but to break lines of sight. A blanket over a curtain rod is better than nothing. Foil is better if you have it. Light leaks draw eyes. Sound leaks draw ears. If you have kids, give them a job so the job calms them. Counting batteries, stacking cans, taping the seams where the curtain meets the wall. You know your space better than I do. Make it smaller inside the bigger room, and you'll feel safer, even if the walls are the same. I grew up here. I know the bends of the Rock River by smell. I know the way the freight yards sound at dawn when the couplers kiss and shake you awake. I know what a summer night feels like with cicadas droning so loud you have to turn the radio up. That sound is gone. In its place is this other thing that isn't insects and isn't machines and isn't weather. It's patterned enough to be learned and strange enough to make the hair rise on your forearms. I tried to hum it back once, just to see what would happen, and the stupidest fear I've ever felt made me bite my tongue mid-note, like I'd crossed a wire and touched something live. I wrote "do not mimic" in the notebook and underlined it 3 times. If you hear it, turn up the white noise if you have any. A small fan if you've got a battery. A radio tuned between stations. The hiss helps. It doesn't block it completely, but it gives your head something else to ride. There's a skeleton of a plan on the military side, whether they admit it or not. I can tell by the way the highways have been cut near the interchanges. You can hear the emptiness of I-90 from here, if you know what to listen for. And tonight, it was a clean, wide gap, not a single tire thrum, which means hard blockades east and west. There were helicopters before dark 2 nights back, running low along the river line, and then none since, which tells me at least one went down, or they were ordered to stop when downwash stirred up more than it contained. If you're near a major road and you see a string of flares placed at intervals, that's not for you. That's for them. A light barrier they won't cross easily, and a way to mark the edge of a line for people who still have night optics. The thing that scares me is simple. If those flares go out and nobody replaces them, the line becomes a suggestion, and suggestions don't hold. Every hour that passes, the habit to check the phone fades a little more, and that, of all things, makes me sad. I used to hate how often I looked at it. Now I miss the idea that tapping a glass square could bring a voice I love into my hand. If you're alone and listening, and you feel that ache rising, do this small thing that helped me once tonight. Write the names you miss on paper. Say them out loud. It steadies the room. It reminds you there's a world with faces in it beyond this wall of dark. I should say where we are again, in case somebody finds me by accident. This is 104.6 FM from the old WQBR studio on State Street in Rockford. 2nd floor above the bakery with the mural of the wheat sheaves, the one that faded to a soft brown a decade ago. I can't give you a phone number that rings, but I can give you the backup plan if this signal drops. shortwave on 6.830 megahertz when the sun's up. And if that fails, scan the weather band for a human voice between the no AA loops. They haven't all been replaced yet, and sometimes a person will break through with a line or two of plain talk before the automated warning takes over again. If you hear a station give authentication in primes, that's an old trick some crews are using to prove they're us. They'll say a prime and then its number in the sequence. If the pair doesn't match, kill the radio and move. I don't want to turn this into a sermon, and I'm not much good at those anyway. But there's a shape to the fear tonight, and it's not the worst thing I've ever seen people push through. I've seen neighbors share power from a little Honda generator across backyards with extension cords when tornadoes took the lines down. I've watched folks in this town fill a high school gym with blankets and bottled water in under an hour when the river jumped its banks. I watched a man who never said two kind words to anyone spend a week cooking stew in a dented pot and taking bowls to the old woman on the third floor because her stove was gas and she was afraid to light it. Whatever this is, took our lights and our sirens and our schedules, but it didn't take the part where someone knocks once at the right door at noon with a plan and a list. Keep a plan and a list. Keep one person who knows when to check on you and when to leave you to sleep. Keep something that makes you laugh, even if it's dumb. I found a wind-up toy in the back cabinet here. A little tin bird that walks bad and falls over. I wind it and let it go on the counter, and when it tips, the sound it makes is so stupid, I can't help it. It's not a cure. It's something that cuts the tension so I can breathe. The sky toward the east is a little lighter than it was an hour ago, which is funny because dawn is still far, but clouds shift, and city glow lingers even when the lamps are dead. That faint gray gives me permission to think about morning jobs. I'll go downstairs with the second can of diesel and top the tank. I'll try the roof access to check the antenna and make sure the sheet hasn't come loose. I'll set the solar trickle charger for the handhelds, even if it pulls almost nothing under cloud, because almost nothing is more than nothing, and that thinking counts now. I'll go back through the supply closet and see if there's a spare belt for the generator because the one on there whistles when it warms, and I don't like that note. I'll set 3 bottles of water on the sill to remind me to drink. It's stupid what you forget when the world tilts. You can sit an inch from a full jug and not drink because fear pours more than thirst. Don't let it. I keep coming back to the first night the power flicked and returned, and how easy it is to forgive a single blink from a big system. We all did it. We said storms somewhere. We said scheduled maintenance. We said a raccoon chewed something it shouldn't. The second blink we called a coincidence. The third we joked about, made a line of it at the coffee shop, posted a little video of the lights coming back with a caption about the city sneezing. The fourth didn't get a laugh, and the fifth is the one that lives in me now, because between the fourth and the fifth, somebody stood at the studio door and rested a hand against it and didn't knock. And a person who has no reason to be gentle will still knock if they want you to open. The ones outside don't want permission in the old way. They want something else. The word I keep landing on is invitation, and I hate that because it makes my head go down other paths, old stories and rules I didn't think I believed in. So, I'll say it plain. If someone you know stands at your door before dawn and says your name, and you feel the urge to answer like it came from your chest instead of your head, step back and count to 60, and then count again. Open at noon, or not at all. I promised I'd keep giving you the plain stuff, the bits you can use right now, and not just the fear. So here's another small stack of it before I put the mic on the stand and go downstairs for that can. Rotate watch if there's more than one of you. One sleeps, one listens, even if you think you don't need it. Tape your switches so you don't flip them out of habit and burn power when you don't mean to. Keep your phone off, not airplane, off, because stray pings carry, and there are ears now that weren't on those towers yesterday. If you must open a window, open the one you can't be seen from the street through. Cook at midday if you can. Heat and smell behave different when the sun is high. If you have to move, plan your path along shade that belongs to buildings you know, and memorize the blocked alleys before you step into them. And if you find an old radio with a dial, don't sneer at it. The old stuff is stubborn in a way the new stuff isn't. The new needs the world to work. The old just needs a hand to turn it. I don't know if I'll ever shake the feeling from earlier when every head outside turned toward this glass at once. It sits in me like a cold coin I can't swallow or spit. But I also remember other turns of heads, other nights, when a song hit at midnight and the block below looked up, not because something wanted to eat them, but because they were alive and the chorus carried. That still exists inside us, under the dread. If you make it to morning, step into a patch of bare light with your eyes half closed, and let it soak your eyelids, and tell yourself in a voice no one else can hear that your body remembers warmth. Then get back inside and do the list. I'll be here with my list too, and if this voice disappears for a stretch, I'll be on 6.830 when I can, or back here when the heartbeat in the room says yes. My name is Cole Bennett. This is 104.6 FM. It's still night in Rockford, but the horizon is thinking about changing color, and that means we bought ourselves a few more hours to learn and hold and help. Stay small and steady. Write names, tape seams, drink water. We go 1 hour and then another. It's 2:17 a.m., and the station walls feel closer than they did an hour ago. I've got the mic gain turned low, almost to a whisper. Not because I'm worried about anyone on the street hearing me. The glass is too thick for that. But because it feels wrong to speak loud tonight. There's a weight pressing in from the outside, like the air is holding its breath. Even the generator downstairs sounds like it's hesitating between strokes. I keep one ear open to the hum in the street, and it's there again. Steady, layered, as if more voices have joined since earlier. It rises and falls like breathing, but it's too precise to be natural. I don't think they're making that sound for us. I think they're making it for each other. About 20 minutes ago, I saw movement at the far end of State Street, toward the old firehouse. The first figure was alone, walking slow, arms hanging loose. Then another fell in behind them, and another, until there were 7. They moved in a loose line, never looking back, never glancing at each other, but staying the same distance apart the whole time, like the gaps between them had been measured. They stopped at the corner and just stood there, facing the direction of the river. It was like they were waiting for a cue. When it came, I couldn't hear it. But they all lifted their heads at the exact same second and continued forward. Watching them is like watching something rehearse, not random wandering, but steps in a plan you can't see the outline of. I tried the shortwave again to see if anyone else in the county was still broadcasting. Most of the band is static now, with the occasional burst of a weather loop or an automated tone. But on 5.995 megahertz, I caught a voice I know, Charles from Freeport. He's a ham operator who's been on the air longer than I've been alive, and if he says something, you can bet it's worth listening to. He said their downtown went dark right after sunset and never came back. By 9, every storefront was empty, doors wide, lights gone. By midnight, They were seeing pale faces in the glass of the second floors, watching the street. He swears one of them tapped the window in time with his own voice while he was talking to his wife. He said it rattled her so bad, she started packing without him telling her to. There's a pattern in the stories I'm hearing. The ones who've seen them up close say the eyes aren't just reflective. They change. In dim light, they glow faint, but in bright light they go flat, like the color drains away. And when they look at you, they don't blink unless you blink first. I can't explain that, but it's come up too often to ignore. If that's true, it means they're not just watching. They're studying you, mirroring you, maybe to make you trust them long enough to get close. Earlier tonight, a short coded burst came across from someone claiming to be a field medic with the Guard. No name, no location. All they said was, blood work shows foreign structures in the plasma, rapid restructuring of muscle fibers, host heartbeat slows, but circulation increases efficiency. Eyes develop reflective coating within 48 hours. That's it. Nothing more. No request for help, no return signal. Just a statement of what they've seen and then silence. I don't know how much of this is still human. I keep going back to what James told me. It's using the blood to change everything else. If that's right, then whatever this is has a blueprint. And we're the material. And if they can coordinate like I've been seeing tonight, then they're not just surviving in the dark. They're building something in it. For those of you still listening, daylight is your ally. I don't care if you believe the old stories or not. I've seen them scatter when the first light hits. If you have a window facing east, clear the space in front of it so you can use it as a sun gate when morning comes. Even a few minutes of direct light seems to be enough to push them back. And if you have to move during the day, stick to open spaces. Shade is their cover, and they know how to use it better than we do. The hum's getting louder now, closer, and I'm not going to the window this time. I've learned that once you make eye contact, it's like they tag you. They don't need to see you twice to find you again. I'll ride this out from here with the lamp off. The generator can run in the dark just as well. If you're hearing me, make sure your doors are locked, curtains tight, and light low. I'll stay with you as long as I can keep the signal alive. This is Cole Bennett on 104.6 FM. I'm not leaving this chair until the sun comes up. It's 3:41 a.m., and I just got off the shortest, most important transmission I've had since this began. The signal came through on a Guard frequency I've been scanning every night, one I thought was dead. It was weak, cutting in and out, but the voice belonged to someone I know I can trust. Lieutenant Karen Stokes, formerly of the 2nd Medical Brigade. We met years ago during a flood relief broadcast, and I've never known her to exaggerate or panic. Tonight, she didn't sound like herself. Her voice was tight, each word clipped like she was measuring fuel. She didn't tell me where she was, only that she was inside the zone and moving at dawn. She said they'd been working on infected tissue samples for 72 hours straight, and the results didn't match any known virus, parasite, or bacterial agent. The pathogen is in the blood first, yes, but she said that's just the delivery system. It uses the circulatory network like a transit map, hitting the major hubs, heart, lungs, brain, in a set order. Once it reaches the brain, it starts rewriting neural pathways. Not random damage, but targeted changes. Karen's exact words were, "It's pruning the human parts, leaving only what it can use." She told me that by the time the eyes develop that reflective coating, it's too late. That's the point where the host's instincts have been reprogrammed. The most disturbing part, She said the pathogen leaves the host's higher reasoning mostly intact. Memory, speech, recognition, all still there. Which means when you see someone you know standing under that streetlight, calling your name, it really might be them on the surface. But the drive underneath is not theirs anymore. She warned me, don't think of them as mindless. Think of them as repurposed. Karen told me something else before the signal cut. They've started communicating in ranges human ears can barely catch. Low-frequency pulses, like sonar, moving through walls, over streets. That hum I've been hearing. It's not just a call, it's a map. Each one of them is sending out a location ping to the rest, building a living grid of where every host and target is. If that's true, then they don't need sight to hunt. They could find you in a pitch-black room if they've mapped you once before. That explains why after you lock eyes with them, they never lose you again. She tried to tell me about a weakness, something in their biology that could be exploited, but the transmission broke apart. All I caught was UV, cascade effect, uncontrolled cellular collapse. Then static swallowed her voice, and she was gone. I don't know if she'll make it to dawn. Out the window I can see them at the intersection again, but there are more now. At least 20, spread across the block, not huddled, not crowding, just occupying space like they belong there. Every so often, one of them will tilt its head as if listening for a voice in the distance. They're not restless. They're patient. That scares me more than the idea of them charging the door. Patience means planning. If Karen's right, then whatever this is doesn't just want to spread, it wants to replace. It's not chaos for the sake of chaos. It's order, but an order that doesn't include us. And if you think that's too much to believe, I'd tell you to watch the way they move together. Even from up here, I can see the moments when they turn in unison toward a sound I can't hear. If you're listening, and you've been marked, if you've locked eyes, if you've been close enough to hear that hum in your chest, you need to move at first light. Don't wait until the streets are warm. The moment you can see your shadow, put distance between you and the place they found you. They remember locations, and they will return to them. I'll keep this frequency live for the next hour. After that, I'll switch to 6.830 megahertz shortwave in case the FM band gets compromised. This is Cole Bennett, 104.6 FM. Stay hidden, stay quiet, and if you see someone you love out there tonight, don't answer. It's 4:28 a.m., and I'm running on the last half cup of coffee left in the thermos, the kind that tastes like wet cardboard but still shakes the cold out of your hands for a while. The rain finally came. Not much, just a thin mist that's turned the street into a strip of black glass under the streetlights that no longer burn. Every drop that hits the studio windows sounds louder than it should. Maybe because the city beneath it has gone so quiet that the smallest noises feel amplified. About 20 minutes ago, I picked up a voice on the shortwave, a man from Belvedere, maybe 20 miles east. He didn't give his name, said it wouldn't matter, that the town was gone, and he was the last one speaking from it. His words were slow, not because he was calm, but because he was out of breath, like he'd been running or hiding somewhere tight. He said it started for them 2 nights ago, just after sunset, when the street lamps blinked out one by one, not the whole grid at once, each one dying individually, like someone was walking down the street and shutting them off by hand. People leaned out their windows to look. Some even stepped outside. By the time the last lamp went dark, the street was full of figures. He said they weren't charging, weren't screaming. They were just standing there, lined up in rows like they were counting houses. He tried to get his wife and daughter into the car, but the engine wouldn't turn over. He said later he saw the same thing all over town. Cars dead in driveways, trucks abandoned in the middle of the road, hoods up, owners gone. And then came the hum. He said it wasn't loud, but it was in his chest, like the first faint pressure before a thunderstorm breaks. That's when his neighbors started walking toward the figures, slowly, like they'd been called. Nobody shouted, nobody fought. They just joined the line. The moment anyone reached them, they were taken around the corner and out of sight. He never saw one come back. By midnight, he said the only people left in the houses were those too sick or too stubborn to answer the call. Then the searchers came. That's his word, not mine. He said they moved in pairs, checking door to door, never rushing, always listening before they knocked. If they heard movement inside, they didn't try to break in. They just stayed at the door, still, for what felt like forever. And if the occupant looked out through the curtain, the searchers smiled. Not a friendly smile, but the kind you see in someone who's already decided something for you. He said one stood at his own door for 20 minutes without shifting. When it left, he thought he'd been spared. But 10 minutes later, the hum came back, and it was closer. He finally left his house through the back and cut through the yards to the feed store on the edge of town, where they keep the shortwave rig for farm reports. That's where he was broadcasting from when I caught his signal. The last thing he told me before static took him was that they don't need to rush. They've got all night, and they know you've got to sleep sometime. His voice cracked when he said that, and then the line was gone. I keep looking at the clock, counting the hours until sunrise. But each time I do, the street outside feels a little darker. They're not out there in groups right now. I can only see 2, maybe 3. But they're spaced far apart, like sentries. One's directly below the studio window, head tilted back just enough that if I leaned too far forward, our eyes would meet. I haven't moved in front of the glass since I noticed. I know what happens if you give them that first look. If you're listening from somewhere they haven't reached yet, here's what you need to remember. They don't have to take you by force. They'll take you by patience. They'll wait at your door, your window, the end of your street, until you make the mistake of thinking nothing's going to happen. And when you step outside, it's already done. This is Cole Bennett, 104.6 FM. I'll hold this signal until daylight if the generator lets me. If it doesn't, check 6.830 megahertz for my voice. Keep your lights low, keep your curtains tight, and if you hear that hum in your chest, don't answer it. It's 7:06 a.m., and the gray outside has finally turned into something you can call daylight, though it's the kind of light that feels filtered, weak, like it's passing through water before it reaches us. I've got the curtains open just enough to see the street without giving myself away, and for the first time all night, it's empty. The sentries that stood out there before dawn are gone. No sign of them slipping away, no last look over the shoulder, just gone, like they were never there. That doesn't mean it's over. If you've been paying attention to the pattern, you know this is when the real work begins for those of us still breathing on our own. Daylight is the only window we get to move without them shadowing us, and even then, it's not safe. I've heard too many stories from other towns of people thinking the sun made them immune, only to find out the hard way that the infected can work through daylight with enough cover. Shade is their armor. Bridges, narrow alleys, underpasses. They'll use them to get close without touching direct light. About an hour ago, I got my first confirmed report from inside Rockford that people we've known, people from here, have turned. A contact in the West End, an old firefighter named Mike Greeley, called in on the emergency band. He'd been sweeping abandoned houses for survivors when he found 3 people in a duplex on Auburn Street. Said he knew 2 of them by name. One was a high school custodian, the other a clerk from the hardware store. They looked normal at first. Pale, yes, but standing, speaking, even smiling. The third person sat in the corner, eyes shut, rocking slow. Mike said he started asking about supplies, about whether they had food or water, and that's when the custodian tilted his head in this deliberate way, like he was listening to a voice none of them could hear. The clerk repeated the same sentence twice, word for word, about how help is coming, and Mike realized her eyes never blinked. The third one in the corner stopped rocking and opened his eyes, and that reflective film caught what little daylight was coming through the blinds. Mike didn't stick around to see more. He backed out, locked the door from the outside, and left them there. His voice cracked when he said it. I knew them, Cole. They weren't strangers. That's the thing I need you to understand. This isn't going to look like some horror movie invasion where the threat is obvious. It's going to look like your neighbor standing on their porch, calling your name, asking for help carrying groceries. And if Karen's right, if the infected keep their memories and their ability to talk, then every familiar face is a trap you have to second guess. I've been marking down the changes in behavior I've seen or heard about so far. If you're keeping notes, add these. They avoid direct sunlight, but will use shade to move in daylight. Their heart rate slows dramatically, but they don't appear weak. Eye reflection is a late-stage symptom. If you see it, it's over. They can speak normally, even remember details from before infection. They seem to coordinate silently, often turning or moving at the exact same moment. We've got maybe 10 hours until the next sunset. Use them. Get water stored now. Fill bathtubs, buckets, whatever you've got. Check your doors and windows for weak points. If you've got mirrors or shiny surfaces near entry points, cover them. Not because of some superstition, but because reflected light gives away movement inside your home. And if you have to leave, plan your route so you're never in shadow longer than you have to be. I'm going to make a supply run in about an hour. Generator fuel if I can find it, maybe more canned goods. If I don't make it back by midday, this signal will go dead. If that happens, scan 6.830 megahertz for my voice after sundown. I'll keep the message short so they can't track it. This is Cole Bennett, 104.6 FM. The city's not gone yet, but it's changing fast. And once it changes enough, it's not coming back. Stay sharp. Stay in the light. It's 1:42 p.m., and I'm back in the studio, but it's not the same room I left this morning. The air feels different, like the walls picked up something from outside and brought it in with me. I've got the door bolted and the curtains sealed again, but my head keeps replaying what I saw out there. I took the service stair down and slipped out through the alley to avoid State Street. Even in daylight, I didn't want to take the main road. Too many shadows between the buildings. Too many places someone could be standing just out of sight. The sun was high enough to make the asphalt shimmer, but the heat didn't feel like summer heat. It felt thin, filtered, like something in the sky was muting it. My first stop was a gas station on Kilburn. The windows were smashed, but not in the looter's way. No glass on the ground, nothing taken that I could see. Inside, the shelves were still stocked, the cooler doors closed. But every clock in that building, even the little plastic ones behind the counter, had stopped at 9:17. I don't mean unplugged, I mean stopped, second hands frozen mid-tick. I didn't touch anything, just filled 2 5-gallon cans from the underground tank and kept moving. On the way back, I cut through an industrial lot behind an old machine shop. That's where I saw them. Not wandering, not hunting, but working. At least a dozen, maybe more inside, moving machinery. 2 stood at the open bay door, and every so often one of the others would wheel something heavy out into the sunlight, where 2 more would wrap it in black sheeting before carrying it back inside. I was close enough to hear the scrape of metal and the click of tools. These weren't random scavengers. They knew exactly what they were after. Some of the equipment I recognized from a distance. Generators, metal drums, and something that looked like a medical centrifuge. The strangest thing? None of them were rushing. They were efficient, coordinated, and silent, except for that low hum I keep hearing. And when one turned toward me, and I swear this on whatever's left of my good sense, I felt the air in my chest vibrate, like my ribs were catching the sound. I stepped back behind a dumpster, heart hammering, and waited until they wheeled the last piece inside. I took the long way back, even if it meant more sun on my neck. Every block felt wrong. Streets I've known my whole life had that same staged stillness. Doors closed, curtains drawn, cars parked like their owners were coming back any minute. But you know they're not. Whatever's happening, it's not chaos anymore. It's organized. They're building something, moving parts into place, and they're not hiding it because they don't need to. That's worse than if they were just feeding. Feeding is instinct. This is strategy. If you're listening and you still think you can wait this out, hear me. They're not waiting. They're making plans for a world where we're not in it. You can hear it in that hum if you let yourself listen long enough. I'm going to stay on the air until sunset. After that, I'll switch to 6.830 megahertz for a short burst, then back here at first light. I don't want to risk keeping a constant signal when they're this active. This is Cole Bennett, 104.6 FM. If you go out before dark, keep moving. Don't linger in one spot. And if you see them working, don't watch too long. They might already know you're there. It's 6:58 p.m., and the light outside is sinking fast, turning that flat gray daylight into the kind of dim that makes every shadow look like it's hiding something. I've been at the window for the last 20 minutes, just enough to keep watch without showing myself, and I can tell you the city feels different tonight. It's not just quieter, it's expectant, like the whole place is holding a breath it's about to let out. At first, it was just a few of them moving through the side streets, the way they do before full dark, always alone, never in pairs, walking like they're following some route they've already memorized. Then, right around 6:30, the pattern changed. They started converging. Every block, more of them would appear, all heading toward the same point, Madison Square, the big open plaza downtown. I could see them from 5-6 different streets feeding into it, all at the same steady pace. By the time the sun dipped low enough that the last direct light vanished from the square, there were easily 100 of them gathered there. Not a crowd pressed together, not chaos, lines, perfectly straight lines, 5 across, stretching back into the park, every one of them standing still. At the front, something I hadn't seen before, tall, broad-shouldered, with posture that didn't match the rest. This one didn't sway, didn't glance around. It just stood there, hands at its sides. head lifted slightly like it was smelling the air. Then the hum started. I've heard it a dozen times now, but this was different, deeper, more layered, like it was coming from every throat in unison. It rolled through the square and seemed to pull the air tighter around it. That's when I noticed shapes being brought in from the side streets, carried by twos and threes. People, some limp, some thrashing weakly, all taken to the front where the tall one stood. What happened next was quiet, almost gentle. Each person was placed on their knees in front of it. The tall one would lean down, grip them by the chin, and hold them there for a moment. I couldn't see exactly what it was doing from this distance, but when it stepped back, the person would stand, slowly, unsteadily, and take their place in one of the lines. And just like that, they were part of it. I counted at least 15 conversions before the lines began to move again, breaking off in perfect order, groups peeling away down different streets. No stumbling, no hesitation, like a military drill. I don't know where they were heading, and I wasn't going to stick my head out to find out. If you're listening, this is the point where you stop thinking this is random. They're not just feeding. They're making more of themselves, and they have a system for it. That tall one, whatever it is directing the process. I don't know if there's one in every city, or if this is the only one here, but if it is the only one, then taking it out might actually matter. Problem is, I don't think you can get within 20 feet of it without being seen by all the others. We've got maybe 30 minutes before full dark, and I can already hear them spreading back out into the neighborhoods. This is when they'll come for the doors, for the windows, for the places they marked during the day. Keep your lights low, your curtains tight, and your breathing quiet. If you've been tagged, if you made eye contact, tonight's the night they'll try to finish it. This is Cole Bennett, 104.6 FM. I'll keep this broadcast up as long as I can, but once I hear that hum on my street, I'm killing the lights and the mic until morning. If I go silent, check 6.830 megahertz at sunrise. And whatever you do, don't step outside if you hear them in unison. That's not a sound you walk toward. That's the sound of them adding to their number. It's 11:22 p.m., and I can't leave the mic on long. They're inside the building. I heard them before I saw them. That hum, low and steady, seeping through the walls like it had weight. I'd been pacing between the console and the window, trying to decide if I should cut the generator early to save fuel, when I caught the faint scrape of metal on metal from the stairwell. At first, I thought it was just the old railing flexing, but then it came again. Deliberate, one step at a time. I killed the desk lamp and sat in the dark, headset on, breathing through my teeth to keep it quiet. The stairwell door at the end of the hall has no glass in it, so you can't see who's on the other side until it's open. They didn't kick it in. They didn't have to. Just a slow turn of the handle, like they already knew there wouldn't be a lock on it. The first one through didn't rush. He stepped into the hall and just stood there, head turning slightly, like he was smelling the air. Behind him, I saw the shadow of another, and another. 4, maybe 5 in total. None of them spoke. The hum was louder now, not coming from one throat but blending together, the pitch shifting slightly every few seconds. I swear I could feel it in my chest cavity, syncing up with my heartbeat until I had to force myself not to match it. They didn't come straight to the studio. Instead, they started checking doors, the old conference room, the break room, the supply closet. Every time they found a door unlocked, they stepped inside for a few seconds, then moved on. I don't think they were looking for supplies. I think they were mapping the building, the same way they map streets. I've got the studio door locked and the emergency barricade slid into place, but that's not going to hold forever if they decide they want in. The thing is, they're not trying to break it. Not yet. I can hear two of them standing just outside. Every so often, one will rest a hand against the door, like they're feeling for vibrations. They know I'm here. They just aren't in a hurry. One of them walked past the window a few minutes ago, slow enough that I could see the reflection of its eyes in the glass. That dull silver sheen caught just enough from the streetlight outside to make my stomach turn. It didn't look in at me, just kept walking, humming in that same rhythm. Here's what I figured out in the last half hour. They're methodical. If they're in your building and you're not an immediate threat, they'll clear the rest of the structure first. Maybe they're hurting. Maybe they're trying to box you in. Either way, if you hear them moving through rooms you're not in, don't try to slip past them. They're not guessing where you are. They know. The generator's got another 3 hours in it, maybe less if I keep the transmitter hot. I'll cut it before they force the door. Until then, if you're out there and you hear this, remember, locks slow them down, but patience is their weapon. They will wait you out. This is Cole Bennett, 104.6 FM, broadcasting from inside a building they've already entered. I'm not leaving this chair until they make their move, or the sun comes up. If I go silent before then, I'll try to reach you on 6.830 megahertz at first light. Stay awake. Stay quiet. And if they're inside with you, don't give them a reason to rush. It's 4:03 a.m., and I'm still here. The hum has stopped, but that doesn't mean they've left. It's worse, in a way, because now there's nothing but silence outside the studio door, and silence from them means they're listening. For the past few hours, they've been moving through the building with a precision I can't explain. No banging, no random searching, every step measured, every pause deliberate. I heard them on the floor above me first, then in the stairwell, then the creak of the old floorboards in the hall just outside. They've gone room to room at least twice, circling back every half hour like clockwork. Each pass, they linger a little longer at my door. I can hear the faint rasp of skin or cloth against the wood, the soft click of the latch handle being tested, never forced. At one point, around 2:15, something slid under the door, thin, black, glinting slightly in the emergency light. It was a piece of metal, maybe 6 inches long, with one sharp end bent into a hook. I don't know if it was meant for the lock or just to see if I'd react. But I didn't move. I sat here with my hands flat on the desk, watching it for 20 minutes until they took it back. The generator's running low. I can hear the sputter every few minutes when the fuel line catches a bubble. I've shut off everything but the transmitter and one tiny desk lamp pointed at the floor. The air in here is stale, heavy with the smell of warm electronics and my own sweat. I've been thinking about what Karen said, about how they keep their memories. If that's true, and if the ones outside my door are from this city, then some of them might even know this building better than I do. They could know where the ventilation shafts run, where the weak points in the walls are. Maybe they're waiting for me to make the first mistake, open the door to check, shift something loud enough for them to know I've moved. At 3:40, I heard something new. 3 slow knocks, evenly spaced, not pounding, not urgent, just deliberate, like the kind of knock you give when you know the person on the other side will open for you. I didn't answer. I didn't move. 5 minutes later, the same 3 knocks came again, but from farther down the hall. I think they're done searching. I think they know exactly where I am and exactly how much time I have left before the generator dies. Maybe they'll wait until the room goes dark. Maybe they're testing how long I can sit in one place without breaking. The eastern sky will start to lighten in less than 2 hours. If I can hold until then, they'll pull back. At least far enough for me to get outside, maybe reach another location before nightfall. But the line between 2 hours and forever is thinner than it feels when you're counting minutes by the creak of floorboards. If you're listening and you're in a building they've entered, do not try to outmaneuver them in the dark. They know it better than you do. Stay where you can control your noise, where you can see every entry point without moving. They don't get impatient. You will. This is Cole Bennett, 104.6 FM. I'll keep the signal alive until either the sun comes up or the door opens. If I go silent, switch to 6.830 megahertz at daylight. And remember, they're not hunting you in the way you think. They're waiting for you to walk into their hands. It's 8:12 a.m., and I made it out. I'm broadcasting from a temporary setup on the roof of the old Transit Authority garage, a half-mile south of the station. The sun's high enough now that even the alleys have strips of light running through them, and for the first time in hours, I can breathe without feeling like someone's holding a hand over my mouth. They left just before dawn. I didn't hear them go. 1 minute, there was that heavy silence pressing against the door. The next, it was just the building again, settling in the cool morning air. I waited until the first light cracked the horizon, then another 20 minutes for good measure. When I finally unbolted the studio door, the hallway looked untouched. No damage, no debris, no signs of a break-in. But when I turned toward the stairwell, I saw it. A single footprint in the dust on the linoleum pointed toward the studio, the outline so sharp I could see every tread mark. I stepped around it. The stairwell smelled faintly metallic, like the air inside a train car. On the second floor landing, I found a small pile of objects laid out neatly. My spare flashlight batteries, the key to the front door, a pen from the console desk, and a folded scrap of paper torn from my own notebook. No writing on it. Just folded once and placed on top of the others. I don't know if that was meant as a warning, a taunt, or something else entirely, but I left it there. Out on State Street, the city looked staged. Cars parked at perfect angles, doors closed, windows intact, but no people. Not one. The air was still and bright, but every storefront I passed had blinds drawn tight, as if the whole block had agreed to hide at the same time. I kept my pace steady, avoiding the long shadows between buildings. Halfway here, I cut through the open square by the courthouse. That's where I saw what they left behind. In the center, where the flagpole used to stand, there was a dark, circular stain on the pavement, about 6 feet across. Around it, evenly spaced, were 12 folding chairs, each with a single item placed on the seat. Shoes, wallets, a child's stuffed rabbit, a pair of reading glasses, all lined up, all facing the same direction. None of the items had dust on them. Whatever happened there, it wasn't feeding. It was something else. Something they wanted to mark. I didn't linger. The transit garage roof gives me a good view of the south end of the city. From up here, you can see the river bend and the bridges that cross into the industrial district. 3 of those bridges have been blocked with vehicles, not in a pile, but end to end, bumper to bumper. No sign of who put them there. Could have been the guard, could have been them. Either way, nothing's getting through without moving a dozen cars. I've got enough fuel for one more full night of broadcasting before I have to scavenge again. I'll use daylight to restock water and maybe find a better defensible spot for tonight. If you're moving today, remember, stay in the light, keep to open spaces, and watch the upper floors of buildings for movement. They like to mark from above. This is Cole Bennett, 104.6 FM, temporary frequency lock from the south roof. I'll be back on at dusk, unless I have to move again. If this signal cuts early, check 6.830 megahertz after sundown. The city looks empty, but it isn't. They're here, and they're leaving signs for each other, and maybe for us. It's 7:21 p.m., and I'm back on the roof, watching the light drain out of the city, like water slipping through cracks. The heat's gone from the air, replaced by that hollow coolness that always comes right before they start moving. Down below, the streets look clean in that unnatural way again. No litter, no strays, no cars left half-parked with the doors hanging open. It's like the city keeps resetting itself every day, hiding the work it did the night before. Today I started seeing the signs everywhere. Not graffiti, not spray paint. Arrangements. Objects laid out in patterns too deliberate to be chance. On the corner of 5th and Chestnut, 3 traffic cones lined up in a perfect row, all pointing east. In the plaza outside the old post office, a ring of empty chairs like the ones I saw yesterday, this time with a single boot placed in the center. On a bench by the bus depot, 6 paperback books stacked by size, spines all facing north. None of it makes sense yet, but I know it's not random. The worst one I found was on the pedestrian bridge over the river. Dead center, right where the sunlight had been hitting all afternoon, there was a circle of white stones. In the middle, a dark, dried stain, the shape of a palm print with the fingers splayed. It was exactly the same size as my hand. I didn't touch it. I didn't even cross the bridge. I backed away until I was in the open again. From up here on the roof, I can see at least 3 of these arrangements within a few blocks. They don't just leave them lying around. They place them in lines of sight from other markers. If you stand in the right spot, you can look from one to the next, like they're points on a map. And I think that's exactly what they are. I've been trying to work out what the map shows. It's not roads, not exactly. More like zones. Safe for them, unsafe for them. Or maybe routes for movement after dark. The markers point toward intersections, doorways, alleys, choke points. If that's true, they're not just charting where they've been. They're planning where they'll be. The first movement started about 10 minutes ago. Figures slipping out from doorways, from behind parked cars. Not rushing, never rushing. Just placing themselves in the gaps where the streetlights used to be. I counted 11 within sight before I stopped looking directly. The tall one, the one from the plaza, hasn't shown yet, but I feel like that's coming. If you're moving after dark, and you shouldn't be, but if you have to, avoid the places where the objects line up. Don't step inside a perfect circle. Don't cross through 2 markers pointing toward each other. They're not decoration. They're signals. And stepping into one might be the same as ringing a bell to tell them exactly where you are. I'll keep the transmitter live until I see the tall one, or until the hum starts. Once that happens, I'm cutting to shortwave for a quick burst, then going dark until morning. This is Cole Bennett, 104.6 FM on the south roof. The city's not just full of them. It's marked for them, and every night, those marks get sharper. It's 9:03 p.m., and the tall one is here. I saw it step into the intersection at 5th and Chestnut like it owned the ground. The others stopped moving the second it appeared, holding whatever positions they'd taken since dusk. It didn't need to signal them. They were already waiting for it. The street around it was empty of sound, except for that low hum, and even that seemed to bend around its presence, like the others were adjusting to its pitch. It didn't look hurried, didn't look like it was scanning for anything in particular. It just stood there for a full minute, turning its head slightly, as if it was checking the positions of every marker in sight. Then, it started walking toward one of them, 3 orange cones in a row, the ones I saw earlier. It stopped at the middle cone, crouched, and touched it with the flat of its hand. That's when the movement began. Not from all of them at once, but in waves, coordinated and precise. The ones on the far end of Chestnut began to close off the street, blocking the sidewalks with their bodies. 2 others moved into position behind the bench with the stacked books. And down near the plaza, a group of 4 began guiding something forward. People. 3 of them, shuffling slow, their hands bound in front of them. I could see one struggling, the other 2 too weak or too far gone to resist. They didn't take the most direct route. Instead, they followed a jagged path that hit every marker I'd spotted earlier. At each one, they paused for a beat, just long enough for the tall one to turn its head toward them, and then move to the next. From my vantage point, I could see it perfectly. The map was real. The markers were waypoints. When they reached the circle of chairs in the plaza, the tall one was already waiting. The prisoners were positioned in the center, each one kneeling in turn. I couldn't see what happened from here, but I didn't need to. By the time the group stepped back, all 3 were standing, their heads tilted in that same unnatural way I've seen before. One of them bent down, picked up the stuffed rabbit from one of the chairs, and held it tight as they were led into one of the lines forming at the edge of the plaza. I counted 22 in that formation before they started moving again, peeling off into smaller groups, each group heading toward a different part of the city. It's a net, and tonight, I watched them pull it closed in real time. Here's what matters. The tall one is the anchor. The markers are meaningless without it. It's the one reading the map, the one sending whatever silent signal tells the others where to move. If it's destroyed, and I don't know yet if that's even possible, the whole system might break, even if only for a short time. That could be enough to get people out. If you're listening from inside the city, stay clear of any area where objects are arranged in a line, circle, or pattern. Don't linger near them in daylight either. They're not just night signals. I think the tall one can read them even in full sun. I'm shutting down the FM signal in 5 minutes and switching to 6.830 megahertz for a burst update before I go dark. This is Cole Bennett, 104.6 FM. They're not wandering. They're not guessing. They're running the city like it's already theirs. And after tonight, I believe it might be. It's 10:16 a.m., and I've been on my feet since sunrise. I started at the plaza, retracing the routes I watched them use last night. In daylight, the markers are harder to spot, not because they're hidden, but because they blend into the background noise of a city that's been half abandoned for months. A tipped-over trash bin, a single shoe in the middle of a crosswalk, 3 manhole covers in a row, propped on their edges instead of lying flat. If you weren't looking for the patterns, you'd think it was just debris and neglect. But when you start connecting them, the design jumps out. I've counted 27 distinct zones so far. Each one is roughly 4 to 6 city blocks wide, with at least 2 entry points and 1 bottleneck, a place where movement naturally slows. The markers always cluster at the bottlenecks, narrow alleys, one-way streets, pedestrian bridges, stairwells in multi-level garages. I think these zones are their hunting grounds. The tall one arrives, reads the map, and directs the sweep. The smaller ones move people, or whatever they've made the people into, from zone to zone, herding them toward collection points. Then, before dawn, they scatter the markers again, shifting the boundaries. It's a fluid system, and that's what makes it dangerous. You can't just memorize a safe route and rely on it. The streets you walked yesterday could be a net today. I found something else, something I didn't expect. Inside Zone 14, behind the old train depot, there's a marker I haven't seen anywhere else. A large piece of white cloth, stained and stiff, stretched across a doorway. On it, in a perfect grid, are 36 black handprints. Some are large, adult-sized, some are tiny. All of them pressed so hard, the fingers have a kind of depth, as if whoever made them wasn't just painting, but pushing through. It wasn't there yesterday. And that's not the only new element. At the north edge of Zone 8, someone, not them, has been countermarking. Pieces of chalk in pale blue, used to draw a small spiral on certain walls and sidewalks. The spirals never overlap their markers, but they sit close, like warnings. I don't know who's leaving them, but it means at least one other person in this city sees the map the way I do. If you're out here during daylight, start paying attention to the small things. Take note of anything placed deliberately. Objects in straight lines, matching items grouped together, anything forming a perfect circle. Avoid the bottlenecks. If you see a spiral in pale blue chalk, don't ignore it. I'm going to spend the rest of the day trying to follow the spirals. Maybe they lead somewhere safe. Or maybe it's just another trap I haven't learned to read yet. This is Cole Bennett, 104.6 FM. In daylight, the city looks open, but it's not. It's parceled up, fenced in by things you can step over without even noticing. And every fence leads to the same place. It's 3:42 p.m., and I found the source of the spirals. They weren't random. They weren't scattered warnings. They were a trail, one that pulled me across 4 zones and into the basement of a half-burned library on Patterson Street. The door was barricaded from the inside, but not well. A piece of rebar wedged between the handles, enough to keep the wind and casual scavengers out. I pushed it aside and stepped into the dark. The smell hit first, not rot, not mold, something metallic, like a pocket full of pennies after rain. My flashlight beam found the walls, and that's when I saw them. Dozens of spirals, each one smaller than the last, stacked and layered until they seemed to pull the eye into a single point. And at that point, sitting cross-legged on the floor, was a man. Late 40s, maybe, wearing a coat so caked in grime it looked like it had grown out of the concrete. He didn't startle when the light hit him. He didn't even look up right away. He just finished the spiral he was working on, chalk squeaking against the floor, before turning his head toward me. "You've been watching them too," he said. His voice was low, dry, like it hadn't been used much. "You've seen the tall one." I asked him what the spirals meant. He said they were safe edges, places just outside the reach of whatever signal the tall one sends. Not safe, exactly, but safer. If you stand in the spiral when it calls, he told me, you can still hear it, but you won't follow. I asked how he knew. He didn't answer, just rolled up his sleeve. The skin of his forearm was pale and tight, marked with deep, symmetrical impressions running from wrist to elbow. 4 fingers and a thumb, bigger than human. "They had me," he said. "Not for long. Long enough to learn how they think." He looked back at the wall. "They don't hunt because they're hungry. They hunt because they're building." I pressed him on that, but he shook his head. "You'll see it soon enough. Look at the rooftops." He gave me a piece of pale blue chalk from his coat pocket and told me to take it. "If you see them moving in formation, find the edge. Mark it. It buys time." When I asked his name, he just smirked and said, "Doesn't matter if they take me again." I left the basement without hearing him follow. The spirals are still out here, but now I'm looking at them differently. They're not warnings. They're boundaries in a war I didn't know anyone else was fighting. This is Cole Bennett, 104.6 FM. I'm heading for higher ground before nightfall. I need to see those rooftops. It's 7:28 p.m. and the light's bleeding out fast. I'm on the roof of the old Edison Textile Building, looking west toward the skyline. From up here, you can see the whole central corridor of the city, the way the streets angle toward the river, the jagged teeth of the high-rises cutting into the dusk. But it's what's between those teeth that caught me. At first, I thought it was just smoke from the industrial quarter drifting low between the buildings. But smoke doesn't hold its shape like that. It doesn't form straight lines. I counted 3 of them, each stretching from one rooftop to another. Thick cables of something pale and fibrous, sagging slightly under their own weight. They weren't there 3 days ago. The man in the library was right. They're building. I tracked one of the cables with my binoculars, following it east until it disappeared into a cluster of darkened apartments. There's movement along it, not constant, but steady. Small figures crawling, hunched low, carrying shapes I can't make out. They stop at intervals, attaching something to the line, then moving on. The line pulses faintly after each stop, like it's alive. In the fading light, I can see where the lines converge. 3 cables meeting at a single rooftop on the far side of the river. That rooftop is wrong. The air above it shimmers like heat off asphalt, even though the temperature's been dropping all day. And standing at the center, yes, standing, is one of the tall ones. It's motionless, but the lines seem to breathe toward it. Every so often, it tilts its head as if listening for something. Once, it raised its arms slowly outward, and the cables quivered from end to end. I don't know what this structure is. A nest, a network, a signal tower. But if those lines are feeding into it, whatever's at the center is growing stronger. And the way the zones shift each day, maybe they're not just hunting grounds. Maybe they're construction sites, shaping the city to suit whatever's coming next. The sun's gone now. The rooftops are blurring into shadow, and I can already hear the first low calls echoing off the streets. I'm staying up here tonight. I need to see what happens when they move along those lines after dark. This is Cole Bennett, 104.6 FM. If you're listening from high ground, check your horizon. If you see cables where there weren't any yesterday, you're looking at the edges of whatever they're building. And edges, in this city, always close in. It's 1:14 a.m., and I haven't moved from the rooftop. The city below is gone. Not in the sense that the buildings have vanished, but in the way sound gets stripped away until all that's left is the rhythm of what's moving through it. And what's moving is coordinated. The cables are alive tonight. They hum. Not an electrical buzz, not the whine of tensioned metal, but something almost vocal. A layered vibration that you don't just hear, you feel in your ribs. It starts low, then climbs in waves until the whole length of each cable is trembling. I can see them on the lines now. Dozens of the smaller ones, crawling hand over hand, silhouetted against the dim glow from the river. They're carrying bundles wrapped in the same pale, fibrous material as the cables. The bundles are moving, struggling. Every time they reach the convergence point, the tall one steps forward, takes the bundle, and presses it against the rooftop surface. The rooftop itself reacts. It flexes like muscle under skin, then swallows the bundle whole. No seams, no opening. Just a slow ripple until it's gone. And that shimmering heat distortion above the tall one? It's not heat, it's shapes. Faint, shifting forms hanging in the air like reflections in warped glass. Sometimes they look like buildings, sometimes like towers of bone, sometimes like nothing I can recognize, angles that don't fit here. The man in the library said they're building. But now I think the building isn't for them. It's for whatever those shapes belong to. One of the smaller ones just stopped halfway along a cable and turned its head toward me. It didn't call out, didn't move again, just stared. I don't think it can see me clearly at this distance, but something in that pause, it felt like being marked. If the cables reach this building, I'll have no high ground left, no view of the map, no warning before they're on me. This is Cole Bennett, 104.6 FM. I'm staying until dawn, but if you hear this and you're within sight of the convergence, get out. Whatever they're building isn't finished yet, but when it is, I don't think any of us will recognize this city. It's 1:14 a.m. and I haven't moved from the rooftop. The city below is gone, not in the sense that the buildings have vanished, but in the way sound gets stripped away until all that's left is the rhythm of what's moving through it. And what's moving is coordinated. The cables are alive tonight. They hum, not an electrical buzz, not the whine of tensioned metal, but something almost vocal. A layered vibration that you don't just hear, you feel in your ribs. It starts low, then climbs in waves until the whole length of each cable is trembling. I can see them on the lines now, dozens of the smaller ones, crawling hand over hand, silhouetted against the dim glow from the river. They're carrying bundles wrapped in the same pale, fibrous material as the cables. The bundles are moving, struggling. Every time they reach the convergence point, the tall one steps forward, takes the bundle, and presses it against the rooftop surface. The rooftop itself reacts. It flexes, like muscle under skin, then swallows the bundle whole. No seams, no opening. Just a slow ripple until it's gone. And that shimmering heat distortion above the tall one, it's not heat, it's shapes. Faint, shifting forms hanging in the air like reflections in warped glass. Sometimes they look like buildings, sometimes like towers of bone, sometimes like nothing I can recognize, angles that don't fit here. The man in the library said they're building, but now I think the building isn't for them. It's for whatever those shapes belong to. One of the smaller ones just stopped halfway along a cable and turned its head toward me. It didn't call out, didn't move again, just stared. I don't think it can see me clearly at this distance, but something in that pause, it felt like being marked. If the cables reach this building, I'll have no high ground left, no view of the map, no warning before they're on me. This is Cole Bennett, 104.6 FM. I'm staying until dawn, but if you hear this and you're within sight of the convergence, get out. Whatever they're building isn't finished yet, but when it is, I don't think any of us will recognize this city. It's 6:03 a.m., and the sky's the color of ash. The cables have gone still, the hum fading to nothing sometime just before first light. The smaller ones scattered in all directions, disappearing into the grid of streets like they'd been absorbed into it. The tall one at the convergence point hasn't moved since. From here, in daylight, it looks almost like part of the structure. A pillar, capped with something vaguely human-shaped. I saw my chance when one of the smaller ones dropped from a cable onto the roof of the Haven Street apartments and slipped into the alley below. I climbed down from the textile building, keeping 2 blocks between us. It moved fast, but not carelessly. Every turn it took felt rehearsed, like it knew exactly where to step and which shadows would hide it best. Eventually, it ducked into a warehouse whose roof sagged under the weight of decades. The front was sealed with rusted corrugated metal, but the side door hung loose on one hinge. Inside, it was cold, colder than outside, as if something was drawing the heat away. The floor was covered in the same pale fibers as the cables, but here they hung in curtains from the ceiling, swaying slightly even in the still air. That's when I realized the swaying wasn't from wind. The fibers were breathing. The smaller one moved to the far end of the warehouse, where a series of shapes lay bundled on the floor. Each was about the size of a person, wrapped so tightly in the fiber, it looked like a cocoon. As I watched, the smaller one knelt beside one and began tightening the wrapping, pulling it in short, jerking motions. The bundle moved. I caught a glimpse through a gap in the fibers, skin pale and slick, an eye rolling wildly beneath the film. The sound it made wasn't a cry, but a muffled, continuous groan, like someone drowning under too much fabric. The smaller one hoisted the bundle onto its back and started toward the door. I pressed myself flat against the wall as it passed within 6 feet of me, the fibers brushing my sleeve. The smell was sharp and sweet, like overripe fruit mixed with rust. When it was gone, I counted. There were at least 20 more bundles in that warehouse, all breathing, all waiting. The cables aren't just for building, they're for feeding. This is Cole Bennett, 104.6 FM. If you see a warehouse with sagging walls and pale fibers on the roof, don't go inside. Whatever's in there isn't meant to come back out the way it went in. It's 12:47 p.m., and I should have left the warehouse alone. I went back, not because I thought I could save anyone, not really, but because leaving 20 breathing bundles to be hauled to that rooftop felt like signing their death warrants myself. The smaller ones were gone, maybe resting or working another part of the city. I had a window. The light through the high windows was dim, dust-choked. The air stank of that sweet metal rot, heavier now, and the fibers hanging from the rafters had settled into a kind of slow pulse. Every so often, one of the bundles would twitch hard, and the surrounding fibers would tighten in response, like a muscle clenching. I picked the one closest to the door, a small frame, maybe a teenager. My knife slid through the outer layer easily, too easily, like it was made to come apart under the right pressure. Inside was a second layer, tougher, threaded with something that glittered faintly. As soon as I cut into that, the breathing in the room changed. It synced. All the bundles inhaled at the same time, a long, shuddering draw of air, and then exhaled together with a low hum. The fibers above quivered. The cocoon split open under my blade, and I saw her face, pale, eyes unfocused but wide. She tried to speak, but the fibers in her mouth and throat pulsed, choking the sound back. I pulled at them with my hands, but they didn't tear. They slithered deeper. The hum grew louder. The floor under me shifted, as if the whole room had taken a breath. Then, from the far end of the warehouse, the fibers parted. One of the tall ones stepped through. Up close, it's worse. Its proportions don't make sense. Legs too long, arms ending in hands that bend backward at the wrist, a head that seems fixed until it turns just enough for you to realize it was always facing you. The air around it was cold, not the absence of heat cold, but the kind that makes your teeth ache. It didn't rush. It didn't have to. The fibers under my feet tightened, rooting me in place. The girl's eyes flicked from me to it, and I knew then I wasn't getting her out. I let go. The fibers released me as the tall one reached her. It touched her forehead with 2 fingers, and her body went still. The cocoon sealed itself, drawing her back into the shape it had been. The hum stopped. It didn't even look at me as it turned and walked back into the hanging fibers. But I knew it could, any time it wanted. This is Cole Bennett, 104.6 FM. I won't try that again. If you're listening, some things in this city can't be saved, not without losing yourself to the same net that caught them. It's 7:19 p.m., and the rooftop convergence is glowing. The light isn't bright, not like electricity or fire, but it's constant, seeping from beneath the pale surface where the cables meet. In daylight, it just looked wrong, like bad concrete poured over something alive. But in the low sun, it's translucent. There's movement underneath. I've shifted to the Bancroft Tower across the river, just high enough to see straight down into the rooftop. The tall one's still there, standing at the center like a keystone. The smaller ones arrive in waves along the cables, each carrying a cocooned bundle from somewhere deeper in the city. They lay them in a ring around the tall one, and the rooftop flexes, swallowing them one by one. When the last bundle disappears, the light from below flares. For a moment, I see the shape under the rooftop, not solid, but an immense spine-like structure, curving in ways that suggest it doesn't stop at the edges. The roof isn't a roof at all. It's a membrane stretched over something growing inside. Then I notice the bundles aren't just gone. They're visible inside the structure, curled and twitching along the length of the spine, each one attached by those same glittering fibers. They're alive in there, feeding it. The tall one raises its arms. The cables quiver from end to end. And then, this is the part I can't explain, the skyline behind it changes. The buildings seem to bend, as if the light's been refracted through water. For a few seconds, there's another city overlaying ours. Jagged towers, bridges strung with bone-white cables, streets that curve in spirals instead of straight lines. Then it snaps back, and I'm staring at the same rusted rooftops as before. I think they're building a door, and whatever's on the other side is starting to bleed through. The sun's almost gone. The cables will hum soon, and the rooftop will start to pulse again. I don't know how long before the door opens, or if it already has, in ways I can't see. This is Cole Bennett, 104.6 FM. If you're listening from the west side, keep your eyes on the skyline after dark. If you see it bend, you're looking straight at the edge of something that doesn't belong here. And once the edge moves, so will everything inside it. It's 2:41 a.m. and the rooftop membrane has opened. Not all at once, not like a trapdoor swinging wide, but in slow, rippling layers. The glow beneath it has deepened to the color of old blood under glass, and the tall one stands at the center, arms bent like it's holding something invisible just above its head. The cables are vibrating so hard they sing, a low metallic drone that rattles in your chest. The smaller ones keep arriving, but they aren't carrying bundles anymore. They're empty-handed, forming a wide circle around the membrane. Each of them presses its palms flat to the surface, and the light responds, pulsing in time with some rhythm I can't place. Not a heartbeat, something older. The membrane bulges upward in the middle. It's subtle at first, just enough to distort the tall one's silhouette. But then it swells further, stretching like skin under pressure. There's a dark shape inside it, moving, slowly, deliberately. When it breaks the surface, the fibers don't tear. They part, cleanly, and something steps out. At first I think it's another tall one, but its proportions are wrong even for them. It's wider at the shoulders, the head longer, tapering to a sharp point that sways side to side as if tasting the air. The surface of its skin isn't skin at all. It's woven from the same pale fibers, but tighter, denser, almost like armor. It doesn't look at the city. It looks straight up, and when it does, the sky bends. Clouds slide out of place, stars shift. For a second, there's nothing overhead but a vertical tunnel of that same dark red light, stretching up and up until it's swallowed by black. Whatever's above it calls. Not in a sound, but in a pressure. A pulling you feel behind your eyes. The cables strain. The smaller ones shudder, their hands fuse to the membrane. The tall one steps aside, and the new figure moves toward the edge. Each step leaves behind a perfect circle of bare rooftop where the fibers have been burned away. I think it's looking for a way down. This is Cole Bennett, 104.6 FM. If you're near the convergence, do not watch the sky. If you feel it pulling at you, get underground. And if you hear the cables stop humming before dawn, that means it's moving. It's 5:12 a.m., and the thing from the rooftop is gone. The cables are slack now, drooping between buildings like veins drained of pressure. The tall one remains at the center, perfectly still, head angled toward the east as if watching something I can't see. The smaller ones are dispersing, peeling their hands from the membrane and climbing down into the city's bones. I've been tracking the burn marks, those perfect circles where the fibers are gone, the rooftop surface exposed. They lead to the far edge of the building, then down the side in long, melted streaks. At street level, the circles continue, burned into pavement, sidewalks, even the hoods of abandoned cars. Each one is about 4 feet across, spaced like footsteps. It's headed toward the river. The trail is easy to follow at first, but then it cuts through an underpass where the air is thick with that sweet metal smell. The walls here aren't walls anymore. They're sheathed in fibers, rippling gently, as if breathing in the faint breeze. My light catches shapes behind them, faces, hands, pressed flat, but moving just enough to prove they're alive. Halfway through the underpass, the circles veer sharply into a side tunnel. This one's older, concrete flaking to reveal brick crumbling to dirt. It's too narrow for something that size to have passed without touching the walls. Yet the fibers here are seared black, curled back like burnt paper. I hear water ahead, not the river. This is a slower, thicker sound, more like something dripping in long, deliberate intervals. When I reach the end of the tunnel, it opens into a wide chamber under the city. The air is damp, and the smell is stronger. On the far side, standing ankle-deep in dark water, is the thing. It's facing away from me, head tilted toward a crack in the wall where moonlight seeps through. For a long moment, it doesn't move. Then it raises one arm, and the wall opens. Not breaks, opens. The brick and concrete slide apart like they were never solid to begin with, revealing another space beyond. I can't see what's in there, but the light coming from it is wrong. Dim, shifting, like it's filtered through liquid. The thing steps through, the wall seals, and I'm left alone in the damp silence, the water's surface settling like nothing happened. This is Cole Bennett, 104.6 FM. If you wake up this morning to find streets without cables, it doesn't mean you're safe. It just means the door has moved, and so has what came through it. It's 10:47 a.m., and parts of the city don't match the map anymore. I've been tracing the riverfront, looking for signs of where the thing went after it vanished into that chamber. The first clue isn't footprints, it's architecture. On Dockside Avenue, 3 blocks of warehouses have shifted. Not collapsed, not rebuilt, shifted. Whole buildings are now a few feet off alignment, their walls cutting diagonally across sidewalks, their roofs at angles that block out more of the sky than they should. From above, it might look like someone grabbed the streets and twisted them just enough to break the grid. Inside these misaligned zones, the air feels heavier. Shadows are deeper, even at noon. Windows reflect things that aren't there. Angles of skyline that belong to some other place entirely. I found one of the burn circles in front of a boarded fishery. The boards were pale, almost white, and they'd been nailed from the inside. When I pried one loose, the air that came out was colder than the street. Inside, the walls were laced with fibers, but not in sheets, in ropes, taut and trembling, running from floor to ceiling. At the far end, where the light barely reached, one of the ropes pulsed, then split open to reveal something glistening and moving underneath. I didn't wait to see what came next. A block away, the pavement itself has changed. The asphalt looks wet, but when you step on it, it's springy, almost alive. Beneath the surface, I can hear a faint rushing sound, like water or air moving through a vein. The burn circles continue here, but they're blurred, as if the surface has tried to heal itself. The pattern is clear. The thing's movement isn't random. It's carving out pockets of the city, reshaping them into something more like wherever it came from. Each pocket is a piece of the other side, stitched into our streets. If they keep connecting these pockets, we'll be living inside the door, not outside it. This is Cole Bennett, 104.6 FM. If your block doesn't look quite right anymore, if your house is a few feet closer to the street than it was yesterday, you're already inside one of the pockets, and the walls around you aren't all made of brick. It's 1:32 p.m., and I've just spoken to someone who's been inside one of the pockets. Her name's Nora, late 50s, lived her whole life on Maynard Street, or what used to be Maynard Street. She says 2 nights ago she stepped out to smoke on her back porch and noticed the alley behind her house was wrong. Not darker, longer. Like it had been stretched, the brick walls pulling away from each other, but the buildings themselves didn't move. She could see farther than she should have, way past where the alley should have ended. So she walked it. She says the air got thicker the deeper she went, and the light didn't fade like it should. It dimmed in patches, as if someone had painted darkness onto the air. She passed doors that looked like they'd been carved into the brick after it was built, doors with no handles, just those pale fibers spiraling inward toward the center. The end of the alley wasn't an end at all. It opened into a courtyard she swears doesn't exist anywhere in the city, a perfect square surrounded by windowless walls. In the middle was a pool, shallow, but the water wasn't water. She said it rippled upwards, like wind through grass, and each ripple carried a reflection from somewhere else. Skylines she'd never seen, skies with constellations she didn't recognize. She didn't have time to look closer. The pool reacted to her. The ripples froze, then reversed, rushing toward her like it was pulling the world over itself. And from the far corner of the courtyard, something began to emerge. Tall but hunched, its outline blurring as if it couldn't quite decide on a shape. She ran. Says she made it halfway back up the alley before the air went light again, and the buildings snapped back into place, like nothing had happened. When I asked her why she didn't tell anyone sooner, she just laughed. Said she didn't think she'd been here anymore, so who was there to tell? Nora's house is gone now. This morning it was replaced by one of those pale fibered walls, curling over the lot like it's been there for centuries. The burn circles stop right in front of it. This is Cole Bennett, 104.6 FM. If you find yourself in a place that feels too far from where you started, turn back before the air changes, because once it does, you might not be able to tell which side you're on anymore. It's 7:04 p.m., and I just watched a whole block disappear. The sun was low, bleeding orange through the skyline, when I reached Braxton and 12th, one of the newer misaligned zones. The burn circles here were still warm, like the asphalt had been holding heat far too long. People were moving cautiously, keeping to the edges, but some still lived here, clinging to apartments that looked more tilted every hour. It started with a sound, not the cable hum. This was deeper, wetter, like something huge dragging itself through mud. The buildings began to shiver, windows rattling in their frames. Then the ground flexed. Not cracked, flexed, bowing slightly as if the street was only a skin stretched over something vast. Fibers erupted from the pavement in straight lines, weaving upward into arches that spanned the entire intersection. More rose along the sidewalks, curling into door frames where no doors had been, some as tall as the rooftops. The people closest to them backed away, but not fast enough. The air turned heavy and sound dulled, every car horn, every shout, muffled like we were underwater. The arches began to fill in, their gaps sealing with thin, quivering sheets of pale material. Behind them, shapes moved. Not clearly, just shadows bending in ways shadows shouldn't. One man ran for the nearest exit. The moment he crossed under one of the arches, the sheet flexed and closed, swallowing him in silence. Then the ground dropped. Not all at once. The block sank in slow motion, buildings folding inward as if they'd been cut loose from their foundations. The fibers tightened, pulling the structures together into a single, seamless mass. By the time it hit the bottom, there was no sign of windows, doors, or even brick. Just a smooth, pale surface where a neighborhood had been. The arches faded. The hum stopped, and the air went still. The block is gone. The map will still show it for a while, but it isn't here anymore. This is Cole Bennett, 104.6 FM. If you see the arches start to rise, don't stop to watch. Don't wait for someone to catch up. By the time you decide to run, you're already inside the frame. It's 12:19 a.m., and the stolen block is moving. I'm on the roof of a parking garage 3 streets over, watching the pale surface where Braxton and 12th used to be. At first it looked the same as when the arches sealed it, smooth, matte, almost like bone. But as the city quieted and the last stragglers went home, it began to shift. Not roll, not slide. Stretch. The surface swelled in places, pushing outward like something inside was trying to stand up. Then the whole mass began to creep, its edges peeling from the surrounding asphalt in slow, deliberate folds. It's not dragging across the street. It's pulling the street with it, the pavement rising and bending as if it's being woven into the structure. Every few minutes it stops, quivering, and from somewhere deep inside comes that low, wet, dragging sound again. Between those pauses, I can see movement under the surface. Long, dark shapes sliding just below, pacing the perimeter. I follow from the rooftops, keeping low. The thing moves in a zigzag, almost like it's following some invisible grid that doesn't match the city's. It passes through alleys without breaking them, but the brick walls it touches dissolve into that same pale material, as if they've always been part of it. Half an hour in, it reaches an open lot where an old shopping center used to be. It stops there. The ground underneath exhales. I can see steam or mist rising in long, curling tendrils, and then the surface splits, opening into a wide, black void. From inside, I hear the faintest chorus of voices, overlapping, speaking in a rhythm too fast to be language. Something comes out. It's tall, taller than the arches were, but thin, impossibly thin. Its limbs jointed wrong, like it's been built from pieces that were never meant to fit together. It doesn't look at me, but it knows. I can feel it, the way the air shifts around me, pressing in from all sides. The thing steps onto the street, turns toward the river, and the block begins to follow. This is Cole Bennett, 104.6 FM. If the streets near you start to feel softer underfoot, they're not streets anymore. They're part of something that's still deciding where it wants to be. It's 4:03 a.m., and I've gotten close enough to see inside. The moving block had slowed near the waterfront, pressing itself against the shell of an abandoned grain terminal. By then, the city was silent. No cars, no footsteps, just the quiet slap of river water against the docks. I stayed low, circling until I found a section where the pale surface hadn't fully sealed. It was a slit, maybe 3 feet long, twitching like a muscle spasm every few seconds. I slipped between 2 rusted silos and crouched just a few feet away. Inside, there's no floor, at least not in the sense we know. The ground is a mesh of the same fibers, stretched in spirals, each one trembling as if something huge was breathing beneath them. Beyond that mesh, it drops into open space. Not darkness, distance. Like looking down through clouds at another world far below. The walls aren't walls at all. They're layers of shifting images. 1 second, it's the inside of an apartment I recognize from Braxton Street. The next, it's a row of high windows I've never seen, the glass black and rippling. Then it's something stranger. Landscapes that don't follow physics, with gravity bending in different directions from one corner to the next. Every so often, something brushes past the opening from the inside. Tall shapes, their surfaces slick and faintly luminous, like the skin of deep-sea creatures. They move in silence, but the fibers under my feet hum harder when they pass, as if the whole structure is wired into them. And then I see them. People, or what's left of them. They're suspended in the mesh, their bodies partially threaded through, heads tilted back, eyes open but unblinking. Their mouths are moving in slow, silent patterns, like they're repeating something over and over. The fibers tighten around them when the tall shapes come near, pulling them deeper until their faces vanish into the weave. The slit began to close. I backed away, but not fast enough. The air thickened, the street tilted, and for a second, I felt the mesh beneath my feet, swaying over that impossible drop. Then I was back on solid pavement, gasping, and the slit was gone. The block kept moving toward the river. This is Cole Bennett, 104.6 FM. Whatever these pockets are building, it's not meant to stay hidden forever. And when it's ready, it won't need to move in the dark anymore. It's 10:11 a.m., and something just stepped out of the sky. The static horizon over Midtown had been pulsing steadily for hours, each beat throwing those faint tower shapes into sharper focus. I was watching from a rooftop near the ferry terminal when one of the vertical streaks began to thicken, like it was pressing closer to the surface. The static there grew brighter, whiter, until it was almost painful to look at. Then it tore, not like fabric, more like the image on a screen splitting open, the pixels dragging apart into long strands. The light behind it wasn't sunlight. It was too cold, too sharp. It poured through the tear and cast shadows that bent the wrong way, curling toward the source instead of away. The first thing through was a limb, too long, too narrow, jointed in at least 3 places. Its surface looked like wet glass, catching and warping the reflections of the buildings around it. Then another limb followed, and another, until the body emerged, tall but hunched, as though the space inside the tear wasn't quite big enough for it. It didn't step down. It lowered itself slowly, like it was feeling for something solid before putting its weight on it. The instant its feet touched the roof of a warehouse, the building sagged inward, metal groaning as if all its bolts had just loosened at once. The crowd on the waterfront had gone silent. The thing turned its head toward them, not fast, but deliberate, each degree of rotation sending small ripples through the static curtain above. Even from here, I could see its head wasn't a head at all. It was an open frame, a hollow oval, with strands of that same pale fiber weaving slowly inside, as if it was still making whatever was supposed to go there. Then it moved, not toward the crowd, not toward me. It headed for the nearest pale block, the one that had been building spires since dawn. The spires bent toward it like plants reaching for light, and when it stepped into their shadow, the static horizon pulsed so hard, the whole river flashed white. The tear above it is still open, and now there are other streaks in the curtain thickening in the same way. This is Cole Bennett, 104.6 FM. Whatever's inside, that sky isn't coming one at a time, and once they start arriving, I don't think they'll stop